assure you that condition is very temporary indeed. All right, welcome to hour number 2 of today's Monday installment of the Power Hour. And yes, that is very true. Yes, there are some folks that might hear this type of information and balk, be shocked at first, but it's only temporary, folks. You know, it only takes a little while for a taste of the truth to take hold, and then all of a sudden they recognize all the lies that they've been fed for years, and they don't have a taste for it anymore. Once they have tasted the truth, there's no turning back. Welcome to the Power Hour. This is Dave.
And Joyce, and I thank you for joining us and for having Bob Chapman, for him joining us today on the Power Hour. As usual on Mondays, we get an update on what the sort of the status of the intentional collapse of the U.S. economy is. Are we going to be merging banks into one nationalized bank? What does he see is going to take place in the real estate industry, employment? Well, let's find out from Bob Chapman today, because he seems to be ahead of the crowd on almost everything he says. And I know how many of you have taken his newsletter, The International Forecaster, and how many of you have been helped by that. And I do encourage you to get a complimentary copy of it. We'll tell you how to do that a little bit later. Bob Chapman, thank you for joining us in the Power Hour today.
Well, thank you for having me again. And I would like to start off by complimenting Dave for such a superlative introduction today. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it, Bob. It's from the heart, you know. I mean, I realize I shoot from the hip sometimes, and that, you know, some sort of frustrates people sometimes. But hey, look, it's all on the. We're playing for all the marbles now. It's all for keeps.
It's either do or die.
It really is.
You got it.
It's do and survive, and so we want to find out how to survive. But, you know, let's talk about this. So let's just look at what's happened to the Obama presidency. I cannot call him President Obama, but let's look at what has happened to the Obama presidency since he's taken office. You know, we've declared war, well, sort of under the table with Pakistan. We're going to throw more money at a problem with no answers. What do you see that has happened or transpired with the powers behind his office?
Well, first of all, you're right about Pakistan. I think that it's going to become part of a wider war, and you saw that backdoor war begin by Israel just recently, and Israel will eventually go after Lebanon, if for no other reason. They don't want to face the challenge on the gas that's been found offshore, which really belongs to Lebanon. And Syria, Iran, we have the extension of Afghanistan moving into Pakistan, which I think will be balkanized. And I think that India will be drawn into the conflict, and this will begin eventually a World War III, and that will be used to consolidate power in that part of the world. And also, and I left out Palestine, excuse me, and also it will divert the attention of the world, particularly Western Europe and the United States, away from the enormous, cataclysmic financial and economic problems that are faced throughout the world.
Mm-hmm.
The nationalization process that you described, I've decided to change that, and for good reason, after much thought. It is not a nationalization process that banking and brokerage houses and insurance companies, financial firms are going through. It is a privatization process, because who's going to end up owning these entities? The Federal Reserve. And the Federal Reserve is a private corporation. So,
bingo. That's an excellent point. It's privatization of it. It's not making them government-owned. It's going to make them private-owned by, the 8 or 12 bankers from, most of them from overseas.
Well, there's a dozen of them, but yes. And, of course, they can't go back. The point of no return was passed in June of 2003, and there's no going back. They are not in full control. They know what their destination is, which is the war in perpetuity if necessary. the elimination of useless eaters, as they call them, anywhere between 50 and 80%, depending upon who you read. And, people listening, that's what they say. And, of course, at the same time, where they're headed now is they're going to, and noises to this effect have been coming from Sarkozy and Merkel and France and Germany and Brown in London, that we should have international financial regulation. And they will start working on that, or they probably have behind the scenes for some time. And they will take that and use it as a housing to say that this is going to solve the problem that we're experiencing now, which is world recession. And incidentally, this week I've called recession depression. We're already in it.
And I think that what the federal government's going to do is in about a year from now, they're going to say, oops, we just missed it. It was really a depression. And we've been in a depression for about a year. They'll pull the same thing again. You're right. And so now
I think your timing may be a little bit too fast. I think it'll take them 2 years to do that. But anyway, that's the modus operandi. And so this excuse will be used for regulation internationally. And then 64.5% of the foreign reserves of all central banks are in dollars. The dollar is going to go into the pit. And so if the dollar is going to be devalued, most everything else has to in currencies. Mm-hmm. So what will happen once they have this regulatory body, as they call it, put in place, which I think they're going to have a very hard time doing, they intend to devalue almost every currency. And in the process of that, they'd say, ipso facto, we now have a new currency called the world unit, or whatever they're going to call it.
Right.
And they're going to have revolt in every single country in the world, because no one's going to stand for it. They've already taken polls throughout the world. 90% of the people do not want something like the euro or any kind of international currency.
And yet today, we've got gold went up to almost $910, past the $900 mark. So it looks as though the only people that are going to be safe around the world are going to be the people that invested in gold or silver.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the people who have listened to you and others and have prepared themselves with a water filter, food, seeds, methods of protecting your family, and also, of course, gold and silver-related assets. And so that's where it's at, and that is what the solution is for you, at least for now, and probably for the next several years. And there is no other course to take. Mm-hmm. And so your program is extraordinarily important because you touch on other areas that people don't. Seeds are an example. Things like Dr. Strauss's heart drops, which I've already had this morning, and all kinds of other things like that.
I think that it's such a good point what you just made. You need to have a Berkey. You need to have extra Berkey water filters. You need to have seeds. You need to have, whether it's Strauss heart drops, whatever it is that you choose to have, charcoal, the clay, all of these items you need to have. And then you need to have the weapons to protect those items to make sure that other people don't come and take them from you. And that's just the way it is. And the gun sales are off the scale right now. Everybody's pretty much running out of the weapons, I've been told, and the ammunition's getting harder to find. So people are realizing what's happening. It's not just those people that listen to shortwave.
You're right. They smell something in the air and they don't like the odor, and they're acting on it. That's a sensory way of putting it, but there's something wrong. They don't understand it unless they listen to programs like yours, and hopefully they will. And by the time the powers behind government get around to this implementation process of regulation, devaluation, default, and a new currency, they'll be hep on everything. And they're going to say, no, we're not going to do it. And if you do, you're going to have a revolution. And it's just not America. I mean, look what's going on in Europe. You've got riots in countries that would have never dreamed of rioting before. Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Bulgaria, Romania, Greece, Paris. I mean, people are disturbed.
I didn't see that on CNN.
As Dave said earlier, college graduates are standing in line to get jobs yelling peanuts.
Mm-hmm. But I didn't see this on CNN. I didn't see anything about Greece on CNN. I didn't see anything about these foreign countries on CNN. You know, you're talking about a world of things that are happening that most Americans know nothing about.
Well, that's why we do what we do, and we're having a tremendous impact, and it's getting bigger every day. I do 20 hours a week. I've got to be reaching over 50 million people a week.
That's right.
Because it goes all over the world.
Mm-hmm.